Hello everybody and welcome back to another review of IMDb's 50 greatest films of all time. Before I tell you what the movie is, which I did last video anyway, I want to comment on a comment that I received on my last video regarding the pen that is usually here in this video. As you can see, it's this one, and it was here in the last one. However, the camera setup was, my table was too close to the camera, so you couldn't really see it, so I've compensated by wearing pens. I just hit myself in the face with one. Wearing pens around my neck. Those are coming off right now. But I have not forgotten the pens. I have 3 lovely writing implements here that I can cycle through, and I can probably steal some more from around my family's residence, if need be, which will probably happen because I've been recycling pens for a while now. So, let's talk about movies. Today we are reviewing 1997's or 1998's. I've gotten conflicting information from Amazon and IMDb, so it's one of those years. The film is Life is Beautiful, which is directed by Roberto Benigni. It also stars Roberto Benigni, Nicoletta Brasi, and Giorgio Cantarini. If you haven't guessed, this is an Italian film, and the entire film is spoken in Italian with English subtitles. This is the second foreign language film that I have reviewed on this channel, the first being The Intouchables, which I talked about almost a year ago at this point, maybe even more than that. But I really enjoyed The Intouchables, and that was the first full foreign language film that I had seen. I know that only about 40% of Inglourious Basterds is in English, the rest is in French, German, and Italian, but it's still an English film per se. This is 100% an Italian film, and it won a number of awards. Roberto Benigni won Best Actor, and it also won Best Foreign Language Feature Film. It was not eligible to be nominated for Best Picture. If you weren't aware, the American Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, or simply the Academy, that is what the Academy Awards is, they will not nominate foreign films for Best Picture. However, I will talk more about that later on in this review. So you might be wondering, what is Life is Beautiful? Some people haven't heard of it. Some people don't watch foreign language films. They're afraid to. They don't, feel comfortable watching and reading subtitles for 2 hours. They think that it could detract from the experience, which I understand, but here's the film that we're talking about today. A man named Guido, played by Roberto Benigni, is an Italian Jew who is out with his friend in 1939 Italy when he meets Dora, who is played by Nicoletta Brasi, for the first time. He continues to run into her by strange random circumstances when really he's trying to win her over. The first act of this film is absolutely wonderful. I'm going to be breaking down the film into its kind of 2 acts that are relatively uneven in regards to length. So this first act, it does take a pretty dark turn. And I don't want to spoil too much because this film is simply wonderful, is the best way that I could describe it. This is one of those movies that I didn't know a whole lot about going into. If you know me, I essentially research films before I go into watching them. I know trivia about it, I know the production history, I know who directed, who's starring in it, who wrote it, their previous work. I like to know those things so I can kind of set a standard for myself for what I'm going to expect, and I can have high expectations or low expectations depending on who's involved with the film and previous history with those people involved. I knew who Roberto Benigni was because of his Best Actor win in 1998. But I had never seen any of his other work. I was unfamiliar with him as a director, and as for Nicoletta Brasi and Giorgio Cantarini, I have not heard anything of them prior to or after this film. Giorgio Cantarini is a child actor at the time of the filming of this movie. I'd say he's around 5 or 6 years old. I'm not entirely sure of his age. And Brasi and Benigni are actually married in real life, which leads to fantastic on-screen chemistry between the two of them. As I said, the first act takes place in 1939, And while, yes, the Axis powers are rising, Nazis are spreading throughout Europe, Guido isn't terribly concerned with all of that. He's a very free spirit, I think, is the best way that he can be described. He doesn't really care. He just wants to live life and have fun, and he sees this beautiful woman and he wants to pursue a relationship with her, and he makes that known, but he's a very charming personality. I think is another great way to describe Benigni's phenomenal performance as Guido. As I said, I have never seen him in anything else, and if this was the only thing that he has ever done, which I'm sure it isn't, but that alone, he does such a great job capturing this character, and, you know, the first act really does a good job of exploring that as a person, you know, him as a person and going into his personality. So I wrote here that the first act establishes Guido as a character, and that's what it really does. It's about, I'd say, 40 minutes. The film is just under 2 hours long. I think it's 1 hour and 56 minutes. And I'd say about 40 of those minutes are spent in the Italian countryside and this town where Guido and Dora live, and, you know, the misadventures that he goes on. It's very much a comedy for the first act. It is a well-written, well-directed, and more mature comedy in regards that it is taking place at the start of the Second World War. This is not, you know, your Seth Rogen, James Franco modern-day comedy, but it does make you laugh, it is funny, and it's very endearing, I think, is another really good word to describe it. Lots of positive things to describe the first act of this film, and it very quickly changes with the second act, because at the end of that first act, there is a very cleverly edited flash forward, where, I'm not going to tell you what happens, but you don't really see the filler. I'd say that it was probably about 5 years go by in, you know, 1 second. You know, he walks in through the door, and when he walks out, 5 years have passed, and you can tell that through some very clever writing and directing by Benigni and whoever wrote the script. I'm actually not sure who wrote it. However, the tone of the film very quickly changes when Benigni's character gets incarcerated in a German concentration camp with his young son. So what he does, he essentially tries to keep his son safe from the horrors of Nazi Germany, and he makes it all out to kind of be a game. And I'm not going to go any farther than that, but the tone of the story changes from this very whimsical, lighthearted, endearing misadventures of a character who has fallen for a woman to a tale of survival and the triumph of the human spirit. You have heard that so many times from so many people in so many trailers from so many critics. You know, the little quotes from critics' reviews that they throw on trailers to make you go see the movie. Yeah, you've probably seen triumph of the human spirit written in a ton of those. And a lot of the times I feel as if that saying is overused, but not in this film. Guido, meaning, you know, he meaning Guido, uses his comedic personality and delivery and his wit to keep his son safe from a heartbreaking situation. And that's something that I really admire about the character as well as the script. The critical response by some critics, now keep in mind that this film did get very positive reviews, but there were some critics who felt as if that approach to this situation was in poor taste, because, as I said before, the film is still technically a comedy. I think one reviewer on IMDb described it as a tragicomedy, and I think that's the perfect way to describe it. It is a he uses comedy to deal with a tragic and potentially life-threatening situation. And some people were bothered by that. Now, in my opinion, this is the best Holocaust film that I've ever seen. I haven't seen Schindler's List in about a year, and I know that that's considered by most to be one of the best World War II films of all time, if not the best World War II film of all time. It's different, it's more of a drama with the backdrop of World War II, as opposed to a World War II drama. An example of that being Saving Private Ryan, which I have previously reviewed and given my thoughts on here on this channel. But I think that the approach to the situation works fine, and I think if that's something you're concerned about, if you think that would offend you, or offend someone you're watching it with, or you think the film's, that idea is just in poor taste, don't let it sway you, because this is a phenomenal film, and I would quite honestly place it in the 10 best films I have seen in my life, and I've seen a lot of movies. I've seen a lot. I love film, and this is among the best of the best, I think. No question at all. What we're going to do right now, we're going to see what Leonard has to say, because sometimes I wholeheartedly agree with the guy. Other times, I don't, and we're just going to leave it at that. So, Life is Beautiful. He gives it 3.5 out of 4 stars, so that is a favorable review, I would say. Extraordinary film by comedy star Benigni about an irresponsible spirit who refuses to ever give in to adversity, even when he is taken to a concentration camp with his wife, Benigni's real-life wife, Braschi, a young son. He determines that the boy will be shielded from the horrors around them, and somehow finds a way to do it. A unique and beguiling fable that celebrates the human spirit. Benigni co-wrote with Vincenzo Cerami. Oscar winner for Best Foreign Language Film, Best Actor, and Best Score. The original title was La Vida e Bella. I believe that's how you're pronouncing it. I speak a little bit of Spanish, and listening to how they were talking in the film, the languages are similar. Obviously not the same. This goes this way. But, you know, kind of off topic there. So one thing I really want to talk about is the emotional impact that this film had on me. I've gotten emotional during very few films. I think the most for me is The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. I have marathoned the extended editions twice, and the ending, the scene with Frodo and Sam on Mount Doom has always been one of, if not my favorite film scene of all time. I absolutely love those films. I got very emotional during the ending to The Return of the King. Also, during the ending of this film, it is incredibly, incredibly well done, and I just kind of had to sit there. I rented this on Amazon, and I didn't skip the credits. I didn't say, alright, movie's over, press B on my Xbox One remote and go back to the home screen and turn off my system because I finished the movie. No, I sat there and just watched the credits, and it's not like I was reading anything, because I can't read Italian. It was just great music, and I was just taking in the events of the last 2 hours that I had sat through, and I was just thinking, wow, that was fantastic. I had no idea that was going to be as good as it was. I was floored by the quality of this film, especially by the emotional impact it had on me, and how these characters that I knew nothing about going into the film could affect me on such a level. This is a phenomenal, phenomenal film, and I don't care if you've never seen a foreign language film in your life, start with this one, it will spoil you. This is fantastic, this is great filmmaking. Some of the cinematography, especially near the third act of the film, I would say, is especially good. There are some really well done shots near the end of the film involving Benigni and his son. Just things going around the concentration camp that evoke this emotional feel, and the location where they shoot the first act, this Italian countryside and this town, it looks absolutely fantastic, and Benigni, who, as I said previously, also directed the film, does a great job with his camera setups of capturing this feel and then showing that in stark contrast to the second half of the film, and it does a really great job of illustrating how truly terrible the things that went on in Europe during the Second World War were, but it's not like Schindler's List, where it's just incredibly depressing imagery smattering your screen for 3 straight hours. It's much more watchable than Schindler's List, and they're difficult to compare. There is not an ounce of humor in Schindler's List. This film is a comedy, and I think that they both do what they set out to do terrifically, but I would prefer to rewatch Life is Beautiful to Schindler's List. Again, they're both fantastic films, and I highly recommend that you watch both of them. However, I prefer this one, and for those of you wondering, Schindler's List places very high on this list. I am hoping to get to reviewing that pretty soon, but we still have a ways to go. So in the end, is this film deserving of its placement? Quite honestly, yes, and I would even put it higher. I would move it up. I think we're in the high 20s right now. I would move it, high teens. I would put it in the teens, honestly. And I'd put it in my own top 10, to be perfectly honest. I love this film, and I will probably watch it again sometime. Is it any good? If you haven't picked it up already, this is a great movie. Please check out Life is Beautiful. I hope that you enjoyed this review. I really enjoyed doing this, and I really like how doing this has allowed me to watch so many great films. I don't think I would have even considered watching this, and I'm happy that I did, because otherwise I would have missed out. So, Life is Beautiful, great film. I personally would have given it 4 stars with Maltin's rating system. This is one of the greatest films I've ever seen in my life. Please, please, please go check it out. If you're wondering what next week's review is, next week, I don't know what today is. The next review, if you're wondering what that is, it's gonna be Leon the Professional from somewhere in the 90s. I hope that you're looking forward to that. I know that I am. Anyway, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Watch this movie, because it's great. It's good stuff, guys. Good stuff. Check it out. Alright, peace out.